Who is ready for story time? I hope so. I am about to share the highlights of mine. And I say highlights because if mine written out is about 20 or so pages long. So I've broken this into 3 separate videos. And so those with less time or shorter attention spans can come back and watch part 2 and part 3 whenever you'd like. But I do want to start by praying before I begin just sharing this, because this is God's story and I only want to do with it what He wants and as He leads. So pray with me. Lord, please be with me. Fill me with your Spirit. Help to set aside my fears and any emotion that's not of you. I pray that I talk about you and your goodness and what you've done. Gently correct me and guide me back if I begin to talk more about myself. And Lord, may you have the glory for this story that you have written. And it's in your name. Amen. Okay, so I have gone back and forth on sharing this for a long time, because once you say things out loud like this, you can't take them back. But I also know that God didn't carry me through everything I've lived just for me to stay quiet about it. And I've learned the more I share, the more that shame has less of a hold. So I want to start at the beginning, and not the polished version, the real one. I was born in 1986, one of 4 girls, natural quadruplets, 1 in 1.5 million chances at the time. There were 5 of us girls total. We had an older sister who was 20 months old when we were born, but we all survived. We were healthy, and looking back now, I can see that was the first sign that God had a plan for my life, even before I knew Him. But what people saw and what life actually was were 2 completely different things. Because inside our home, there was a level of control that's hard to explain unless you've lived it. Everything revolved around my mom. We were, almost spectacles, what we wore, what we said, how we acted, how we were seen by other people. And when I say we, I'm referring to all of my sisters and I as a group. But appearance was everything. And looking like the perfect family mattered more than what was actually happening inside the home. Excuse me. She wanted the spotlight, and we were a part of that. Whether it was attention or sympathy or praise, everything circled back to her. And behind that, there was fear, so much fear, physical abuse and manipulation, unusual punishments like whipping the bottoms of our feet or locking us in cellars for long periods of time. So many times we were confined and isolated, controlled in ways that a child shouldn't experience. But when you grow up in that, you don't call it abuse, you call it normal, and you don't question it. You just learn how to function inside of it. You learn how to read the room. You learn what not to say. You learn what to say. You learn how to keep things looking right on the outside, even when they're not. And at the same time, you're still a kid. So trying to, you're trying to play, trying to laugh, trying to feel normal. And that's why, my memories feel so split, because I remember climbing trees with my sisters and laughing outside and just being little girls. But I also remember the fear that was kept inside. And those two things existed at the same time. But, about around early 90s, we moved to Kentucky, away from my dad. And as kids, we believed what we were told. We were told he didn't love us, that he didn't want us. And when that's what you hear over and over, that becomes your truth. But underneath that, there was that manipulation happening, control, confusion, and we didn't have the ability to question any of it. Then in, again, early 90s, my mom told us that she had cancer. And this is something I didn't understand until much later, but I remember being scared, but I also remember feeling relief. And that's hard to say out loud, but that feeling didn't come from nowhere. That came from what life felt like inside our home. And at that age, I didn't know God and I didn't know truth. I just remember hoping that there was a heaven, because I was so afraid of hell. I remember the first time I asked Jesus into my heart was not out of, the acknowledgement of what he did for me on the cross. It was my mom banging on the bathroom door I'd locked her out of, trying to get in to get to me. And she was so angry about who knows what. But I remember the feeling of thinking I was going to die. I was only about 4 or 5 years old, but I hurriedly said the prayer in hopes that God would hear and I would go to heaven and escape hell. So fear was so ingrained in anything spiritual. That was our first introduction to anything spiritual. It wasn't love or peace, but utter fear. Then, there were times we got sick more than once, and we were told the food had gone bad, or it was left out, or left out in a certain spot, like it was left in the garage, and so that's why we got sick. But what stuck with me, even as a kid, was that doesn't all make sense, and that while we were all sick, my mom never got sick. And, people would show up. They'd bring meals, check on her, come, and they're telling her how amazing she was. What a great mom, giving her that attention, the spotlight that she craved. And her just feeling, I felt this quiet confusion, like something didn't match up. And I found out later why, but I didn't question it, because you don't question your environment as a child. You just survive it. Then there was a moment that I still think about all the time. We'd all woken up. We all had headaches. So we stayed home that day. There was no heat in the house. It was freezing. And we stayed in sleeping bags in the living room all day and then all night. And it was cold. We lived up north, and I just remember laying there with my sisters trying so hard to stay warm in our coats and hats and long johns. And the next morning, when my mom came home, she took us out, and a repairman came, and there was a carbon monoxide leak in the basement. The same basement where we slept. And he said if we'd slept down there that night, we wouldn't have woken up. It was bad. And I've thought about that moment so many times because I don't understand everything around it. I was a kid, but I do understand that we were protected, because there are too many moments in my life where the outcome should have been very different, and it wasn't. So mid 90s, we lived in a pop-up camper for a while in the summer heat of Alabama. And what's wild is I remember thinking it was fun. Like, it was an adventure. Because when you're a kid, you make things okay in your mind. You don't know any different. And I had my sisters. And that felt like enough. That was everything to me. We went where we were told, did what we were told. We believed what we were told, including that our dad didn't love us. And we, were told that over and over. But years later, I found letters that he had written, and they said the complete opposite. And I remember thinking, how much of my life did I believe that wasn't actually true? And around that same time, there were things happening during summer visits that shouldn't have been happening between a child and a grown man. Things I didn't fully understand then, but I do remember that those visits stopped. And looking back, I see that as protection, because even when people didn't step in the way that they should have, something did. And now I know that was God. That was God. So looking back at all this now, I see something I didn't see then. God was present before I ever acknowledged him. He was protecting me before I ever prayed. And that matters to me, because it means that my story didn't start when I found God. It started with him already covering me. I just didn't know it yet.